Morning everybody, today I'm out at a soccer tournament. There's dozens of school here, hundreds of players, both male and female. Today I'm going to show you how I like to photograph soccer. Hey everybody, today I'm talking about a sport I played a lot of as a kid, and that is soccer. Now I don't play it nearly as much as I used to because I'm kind of old and broke, but I still like to photograph it. So today I'm going to take you out to a soccer tournament and I will describe how I like to photograph the game. I'll talk about positioning, I'll talk about gear, I'll talk about lenses, I'll talk about settings, I'll talk about different places and different ways to get better photos from your soccer games. Hang on with me to the end because I'm going to have some cool tips and tricks at the very end to make your photos even better. All right, let's go on out to that soccer field. So for day games, the first thing I look at when I approach a field is where is the sun? In general, you really want the sun to your back so you get the best light. Try to avoid shooting into the sun whenever possible. So that is the first thing I look for when I walk up to a soccer field. Now normally the way I photograph is I'm not shooting for a particular team or a particular player. If I was, I would set myself up in a way to, of course, best cover down on them. Generally, however, I am covering the entire game. I'm trying to get as many players from both teams as possible. So that's going to kind of drive where I set up at. So the spot I usually like to set up is right here at the center line. The reason being is you can cover both teams at the same time. You get a little offense, defense from one side, a little offense, defense on the other side. It has its disadvantages though, mainly that you get a lot of crossing shots, people running past you rather than straight at you, which leads me to the next position that I like to go to. The other location I really like to photograph from is on the back side behind the goal on the right corner. For the same reasons I articulated in my basketball video, most players are right-handed, which means they like to kick with their right foot, which means they tend to open up using their on their right side. So when you're on the right side shooting in, much more likely to get those kind of photos from those guys coming in to shoot on the goal. The other great thing about this location is you got all the offense coming in, so you're going to see them straight dead on, which is great because that's really what you want. You want faces, you want eyes, you want expressions. Those are the kind of things you're looking for good sports photography. And for those reasons, that's why I like the right corner behind the goal. But I gotta tell you, you're gonna need some pretty good lenses for that. So let's talk about lenses right now. Now when it comes to camera gear, basically I have my far lenses and I have my near lenses. For my far lenses on a bright, nice, sunny day like this, I like this 200 to 500 5.6. This is made by Nikon. Of course, I'm a Nikon guy. Now I will tell you, the zoom range on this is phenomenal. I can get stuff that's relatively close to at least halfway across the field. So I can cover about 1/2 to 2/3 of the field with this particular lens. And you don't have to buy the name brand. There's Tamrons and Sigmas that have the same basic setup like this that are relatively inexpensive compared to the big prime lenses. Now, of course, shooting at night would be a different story. I would have to pull out one of my big primes that are f2.8. Currently, I have a 400 f2.8. That's what I would need at night. But during the day, one of those, extended telezooms, 200 to 500 like I have here, that have higher f-stops, daylight, they're awesome. And that is what I would recommend if you're just getting started out and you have access to day games. If you're shooting at night, you're probably gonna have to bite the bullet a little bit and get some bigger primes, say a 300 in the f2.8 range. If you're gonna go that route, I highly recommend you go with used. It's just far less expensive than if you're to buy top dollar for brand new lenses. And I tell you, lenses last decades. I've used lenses that were over 20 years old and they worked great. Now, when you get a little bit closer and stuff's like right in front of you, even at 200, it's a little too much. So I switched to my 70 to 200. It's a rapid move because by the time that you hit to the 200, you're maxed out at 200. On the low end, really they're right in front of your face. Now, can you photograph soccer or other field sports with, say, something in the 200 range? You can, but I tell you, you're pretty limited. You're stuck stuff that's happening like right in front of you. Otherwise, it's a huge crop, and I'm not an advocate of large crops. The images tend to degrade the more you blow them up, so I don't recommend it. However, if you're just starting off and you want a lens and you want to get into a little more professional sports photography, a 70 to 200 is an excellent place to start. So let's talk settings. Nice sunny day like this, or at least intermittent sun like this, you can get away with, like, say, aperture priority. I don't open it all the way. I'll stop it down maybe one stop, except for the 5.6. I'll just leave that open because that's pretty stopped down anyway. Set the ISO, say, about 200, and let the camera decide the aperture. Usually with bright sunlight, I'll leave my exposure compensation either 0 or maybe a plus 0.3, kind of fill in the shadows. If it's cloudy, I'll actually set my compensation about a stop over. And the reason I do that is because oftentimes the background is kind of a light gray, and that throws off your metering. So I have found that adding about a stop actually gets my exposures just about right. But no matter what, if you use aperture priority, shutter priority, whatever, I would say the best piece of advice I give you is have at least 500th of a second, which is not tough during the day like this. You know, I usually set around 16th of a second to start. Now, nighttime's a little different, you know. My general word of advice for nighttime shooting is thousandths of a second, aperture f2.8, ISO depending on the situation at hand, how much light there is at the field you're at. But that's just my general rule. You can go down as low as 500th of a second, although you're going to get a little bit more movement and blurring action at that point in time. So 1,000th of a second is a good starting point.
All right, everybody, we're to the part where I'm going to give you some tips and tricks about how to get better soccer photos. And I will tell you about half of these are applicable really to any field sport. All right, let's get going. The first tip I would give you is either shoot from very low or from very high. Now, in a soccer field, it's very difficult to shoot from a high angle down onto the players, but you can get low. And what I mean by that is never stand at eye level with the players. You don't want to stand as you photograph. I know there's some folks out there who might have some issues getting up and down, kneeling, sitting, that kind of thing. And I get it because I have a bad back myself. But if you can get low, your perspective on the players as you photograph them will be much better. And this is really important when you're photographing small children's sports where they're, you know, significantly shorter than you are. Because when you're photographing down on them, in essence, you're kind of looking down on them, and it makes them look diminutive. If you shoot very low from a sitting position or kneeling position, shooting mildly up toward them, it makes them more athletic, bigger than life, stronger, and those are the kind of shots you're really looking for with sports photography. Now, for soccer, if you're using shorter lenses, you're kind of forced to move up and down the field a lot, so that means you're going to be getting up and down a lot. However, if you're using those big, longer lenses I talked about earlier in the video, you can sit in spots and just hang out there. I do that on a regular basis, especially when I got that zoom and I can cover so much of the field. Here's some of the chairs that I like to use. So this chair right here is actually what they call a stadium seat. It's designed to, when you go to a stadium, it's got a spot, you can park it on the seats, but I use it on the ground all the time. I use this for indoor sports all the time, like basketball. This is my personal favorite. It's got a lot of padding. It's got a good backrest on it. And if you're doing indoor sports, there's a rubber bottoms on it so it doesn't mar up gymnasiums. This is my personal favorite, and I'll link it below. An alternative that I sometimes use is one of these folding stools. I use this all the time because it folds up really neatly, just like that. It's very portable and it's light and it works pretty well. I'll also link this down below with some other products. Of course, you can always sit on the ground. That's hard on my back. I have a bad back. That's why I like the stadium chair. But either way, if you're going to get in a position, you're going to be there for a while, those chairs are really awesome. All right, tip number 2, and this is specific to soccer. When you're sitting at that center line and you're looking in either directions, again with one of the longer zooms I was talking about, one thing to really look for is on corner kicks. Often with the corner kicks, they're going to kick it in toward the goal. There's going to be a mass of people down there in and around the goal of both teams, and they're going to be trying to get it into the goal. Oftentimes you can get a lot of leaping headers at that point in time, which makes for some kind of cool photos. So I would always be looking for that if you're photographing from the center line back toward one of the goals. Again, this only works with one of the longer telephoto lenses just because of the distances involved, but that's something to look for. Tip number 3. Now, if you're sitting behind that end line I was talking about earlier, like in the corner or behind the goal off to the side, one of the things you want to look for is shots where the opposing team is coming in and the goalie's going out to meet them. That can make for some dramatic photos, so always be looking for those. Speaking of goalies, tip number 4, warm-ups are the best time to get goalie shots. It's very difficult to get decent goalie photos during a game. It can be done, but they're pretty rare. However, in warm-ups, pre-game, walk out onto the field and photograph the goalie as he's taking practice shots. You can get some great photos of goalies in action while they're going for those practice shots. And of course, I try to make it look like it's not during the practice and the warm-up sessions, but nevertheless, those are the best times to get goalie and warm-up photos. Okay, tip number 5, and this is applicable to really any sport out there that has a goal, a puck, some sort of device that people are moving down the field or down a court. Basically, for better sports photos, always try to get, if possible, always try to get that device, that ball, into the photo. It just makes for so much more interesting and dynamic action photos. And that's advice I would give to anybody for any sport at all. All right, tip number 6, specific to soccer, is players tend to have a habit of when they're running with the ball and dribbling of looking down at the ball. That doesn't make for super exciting, dynamic photos. So what I tend to do is look for those moments and try to catch them where they are looking up from the ball, looking downfield, look at who they're going to kick to, look who they're going to pass to. That makes it much more interesting. You can see their faces, you can see their eyes. So those are the type of photos I look for. When they're down looking at the ball, you just get a lot of top of heads. It's not as exciting. And that brings me to my 7th point, which is fill the frame. And that not just applied to just to soccer, but I would say that is true of just about any sport you can imagine. If you're in a position where you're taking photos of people out on the field running around and they are so far away in the picture that you have to blow it up and crop it down to this tiny little portion out of that huge frame, what you're going to see is a lot of degradation in the image quality. And I see that a lot. People will blow up photos and they'll wonder why it's not sharp, it's kind of looking fuzzy. That's why. The photo just basically falls apart. Now, I know modern cameras with very high resolutions, you can get away with a lot more cropping, and I'm not opposed to that. I get that, and I'll do that myself. But in general, you want to fill the frame. And unfortunately, with field sports, that means usually longer lenses or getting a lot closer. And my 8th and final point is always look for emotions after the play or during it. But after the play, you'll often say you got somebody just scores. More than likely, people are going to be very excited about that. And you're going to see some really cool emotional impact from that goal or that score, both from the player that scored, from their teammates, that kind of thing. And those make for some terrific photos. So always look for those types of things. All right, everybody, thanks for joining me today. If you liked this video or you got something out of it, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you're not already a subscriber, you might want to consider hitting that subscribe button while you're here. Also, stick around. You might want to check out this video right here. It's a great follow-up to this one. I'll see you next time.